Good morning, my magnificent friends. Welcome back to Tea with Sue. I have iced tea this morning. It is hot as blazes here in Alberta. You can see the fan in the background blowing my hair around. It's just a welcome relief to have a breeze. I have no air conditioning in my apartment, so I'm doing what I can to keep cool. Well, because it's so hot, I thought we would continue our hot topic of relationships today. Now, I want you to know, first and foremost, that I am not an expert on relationships. I am a student, a lifelong student of relationships. So I've had two marriages that ended. I have had a longer term relationship that ended, and I've had some dates in between to help me learn about relationships. And if I've learned anything, I've learned that relationships are tricky. And they endlessly mess with your head. There's no question about it. Most of the chatter, at least for women around the table, has to do often with what's going on with their relationships. And it doesn't matter if it's the relationship with their kids, their parents, their siblings, their intimate partners. It doesn't matter what it is. There's confusion and frustration and sometimes downright joy in relationships. But it's been said that when we grow out of childhood and we enter, first of all, the teenage years and then adulthood, that we have relationships in our lives, especially intimate relationships, to work out whatever it was that we couldn't work out when we were kids. Because let's face it, our parents tend to be all powerful when we're small. And if they do something that's perhaps not appropriate as a parent, then we're left to deal with that as a kid because often we don't have the resources to work that through at a young age. So there's no question that whatever we learned growing up about relationships moves on into our adult relationships unless and until we have a conscious awareness of what's going on. So, and then of course, if things weren't to our liking, then we can do what we need to do to change that, alter it, alter the way we are, alter what's happening in our relationships. It sounds simple, right? But it's not easy. At least I haven't found it to be easy. I've stumbled and fallen and come up with bruises and scrapes and all kinds of experiences from relationships that sometimes have left me rather bemused and if not shocked and breathless at times. But you know what? I feel never more alive than when I'm involved in an intimate relationship, because it's a mirror for me and a contrast for me that I wouldn't get all by myself. So being in relationship is essential to our human growth, our wellness as humans. And so it's a topic that's worth exploring. Now, if you're like me, you didn't get a whole lot about how to do relationships when you were growing up. There was no class at school that said, well, this is how you treat one another. Maybe there are classes like that today. I'm not sure. And if so, then the younger generation is very fortunate because we just did the best we could. We watched how other people treated us, and we watched how other people treated each other, and learned from our adult role models, maybe what worked, what didn't work, what was good, what was not so good. And based on that information that we took in like sponges when we were little, we began to form some idea of, oh, if I'm male, this is what's expected of me in a relationship. If I'm female, this is what's expected of me in a relationship. Regardless of what gender your partner is growing up, then we have these expectations. We have this sense of, well, this is who I need to be in order to have a relationship. So then, of course, in the teenage years, just when we have the least amount of logical, organized brain power to work through what's going on right in front of us, we're flooded with hormones that send us emotionally all over the place. One moment we're ecstatic, and the next moment we're in the depths of despair. And then we're trying to be boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever, and it may or may not work that well. And so I can remember lots of teenage angst because I was over the moon one day about this person or that person, and then the next day things had come crashing down, and I'm going, what just happened? What just happened? I don't know. What did I do wrong? And of course, that's the assumption, right? Well, what did I do wrong? And maybe you didn't do anything wrong. Maybe it just was the way it was, and it was short-lived, and that's all it could be, because we're learning and we don't know how to do relationships. I can remember as a 15-year-old being seriously tongue-tied and totally unaware that I might be attractive as a young woman, but not really having any sense of being worthy of anyone else's attention. So when this very handsome young man approached me at the swimming pool, his towel happened to be right next to mine. I was all kinds of shocked because he started talking to me, and I didn't know what to say. And I'm, oh, really? What? Why is he paying attention to me? And I guess he thought I was cute, and I probably was at 15. And so there began a very awkward and stumbling kind of connection that turned out to be totally marvelous for me, because it was the very first time that a young man had paid attention to me in that way. And so I was all kinds of excited. And he was 2 years older than I was, drove a little sports car. My mother would not allow me to ride in that sports car. And the only way that we could meet was if he wanted to teach me how to play tennis. And so we had to meet at the tennis court. So my mother drove me there and drove me back. And I was quite disappointed that I never got a ride in that sports car. But anyway, those were kind of the rules in those days. And I wasn't officially dating as such, but I got to hang out with him for a brief period over the summer. And he treated me wonderfully. He listened to all my teenage moaning and groaning and how I felt about life, which in those days was not very good. I didn't feel that good about myself, and I didn't feel that good about life, but he listened very patiently, and he seemed to really care about who I was and what life was all about. So it was a lovely first experience to have, to kind of test the waters of, well, what's it like? Now, not all my relationships were like that. So I was glad to have that little piece to kind of hang on to, and to understand, oh, is is this how a guy treats me? Oh, I like it. And, but of course, even though I liked it, I didn't necessarily expect that that was the way, quotes, it should be. I saw very clearly that that's the way he was, and I really liked it. But I was in that sort of experimental phase. Well, he moved away at the end of the summer, which caused me a certain amount of sadness because we got on really well and I really, really liked him. But high school beckoned for me, and I got into a whole different scenario. So I'm sure you can remember what it was like being a teenager and going through the ups and downs and the twisty turns of relationships. Well, that's what the big job of being a teenager is, of course, is to learn how to be in relationship. And sometimes we do it very badly, and sometimes we do it better. So so we have to cut ourselves some slack because, as I say, we didn't go to class to say, okay, this is how relationships work and this is what you need to look at in what you can expect and what you deserve and all of those kinds of things. We just kind of go by whatever we learned up to that point, which may not be correct. So this is why I'm saying that relationships are quite tricky. Now, let me just talk briefly about being, quotes, in love. So it seems to be easy for us to respond to the hormonal surges and the emotional attraction when we're young, that we get all over the moon about someone and think, oh, I'm in love. Well, let's be honest, probably for a lot of us, not really understanding. And you have to know, I mean, I grew up in the 60s as a teenager. So we were caught in a kind of a time warp between the more traditional um, no sex before marriage and the free love era. And depending on how you were raised, you might have had a little confusion about that and about what to do about that. I know I certainly did. And when a young man came along that seemed to be really into me, and I felt this huge amount of, okay, let's be honest, it was lust for him. Well, the way I was brought up, oh my goodness, well, you better get a ring on your finger because there's going to be no fooling around here until you're married. And well, that's not the best reason to get married, let me tell you. We were young, we were foolish. Oh my goodness. And so I got married young, and did I love the guy? Well, I had some feelings for him, but I can't really say that it was love. Heck, I didn't even know if I loved myself in those days. So there was, I called him my practice spouse or my starter spouse because because you have to start somewhere, right? And I learned, and it was not easy. Well, of course, as we stumble along with relationships, lots of times we learn what not to do. We learn, okay, that didn't work so well. Maybe I need to try something entirely different. And so after that relationship ended, we parted amicably. I mean, he was going in one direction, I was going in another, and I quickly learned that it didn't matter how much enthusiasm I had in the relationship of something that I had grabbed hold of. I'd grabbed hold of personal growth in those days, and I thought this was the way to go. And I wanted him to come along with me. Come on, experience this. And he was a reluctant participant at best. And at the end of the day, it was, well, Sue, You cannot drag him to where you are. Let the poor man be. Allow him to go his own path, and you go the path that you feel is the best for you. Now, fortunately, we had no children in that relationship, so it made it easier for us to part ways. And of course, we didn't own much of anything, so there was no big settlement issues and all of that kind of thing. It's just he took his stuff, I took mine, off we went. It was pretty simple. So after that, I was pretty devastated because I didn't like feeling like a failure. And as far as I was concerned, I had failed. I had failed to pick the right person for me, and I had failed to make that work, until death do you part, because those vows were pretty staunch in those days. That divorce was not that acceptable still, and not that common. And so I'm going, oh no, I tried to get this right and I didn't. So I did a lot of soul searching about, okay, what was this all about? And I remember saying to myself, well, I don't think I even know what love is. And in fact, I don't even know if I love myself. So at that point, I embarked on this little process that I started a journal, and I called it Learning to Love Sue. And every day I would kind of pour out my heart about what I was feeling. And there were lots of tears as I was working through. I was working through the grief as far as the loss of a relationship. And I dearly loved his parents and his family. So it was hard to kind of give that up because we'd been a unit for 8 years. And so I'm going, well, just because he and I aren't in a relationship, do I have to let go of them too? And so it was hard. But as I worked through this process, I worked diligently for about 6 months, took more courses to explore who I was and what was important to me. And at the end of that period, I came out feeling stronger, feeling as if I might be ready for a more mature relationship, one where I was more aware of what to do and what not to do. And in lots of respects, I know my dad was fond of saying, well, you don't seem to be able to pick very good when it comes to a man, because he just wanted me to be happy. He wanted me to find a good man who could provide well for me so that I would live a good life. That was my dad's, and that I could be happy. And he saw that I faltered and stumbled and it didn't work. And so he's kind of a little frustrated for me, and frustrated, well, gee, this is all I want for her and she doesn't seem to be able to get it. So, oh, sorry, Dad, but you know what? My first husband was the perfect partner for me at that time, because our relationship was a an experience where we could explore a bunch of things together, because we were both pretty naive and hadn't a clue about what to do next. Gradually we learned. Gradually we learned. And the next relationship I learned even more. And the next one I learned even more. So have I been a failure at relationships? Well, I guess in society's eyes, yeah, probably I have, because I seem to be sort of a serial monogamist here. so, but I'm still trying to figure it out. All right. And maybe you are too. So take heart, because it does take a certain amount of interaction. I mean, if you sit at home in front of the TV, you're never going to find out how good you are at relationships. It's risky, it's messy, but I have to say it's worth it, because the growth I found in relationship has been enormous for me. I don't know that I could have grown in that way in any other scenario. So it's worth not only dipping our toe in the water, but it's worth diving in. Are you going to get your heart broke? Chances are pretty high. But what if in getting your heart broke, it breaks it open for you to embrace even more in relationship? What if? So think about it from that perspective. And what if you wouldn't be the strong, loving, giving individual that you are today if you hadn't had those other experiences, regardless of whether they were good, bad, ugly, indifferent, whatever? I mean, if we're paying attention, there's a lot of gifts come out of relationships, right along with the tears and the downside of being in relationship. I mean, we worry, right, when we're in relationship because there's another person to think of. And so that can make it hard. So I think this week, let's think about our relationships and look at them from the perspective of not what can I get from the relationship, but what am I giving to it? And as a result, what are the nuggets that come from that? What is it that can show us another path, show us a better way, a different way, whatever? And you got to know in the relationship war between, and I call it quotes a war because sometimes it feels like that. They talk about the battle of the sexes and men are from Mars and women are from Venus. Well, that is true. We do think very differently and we are wired very differently. So coming together in a meaningful way that adds something to each person's life is not easy, because we make assumptions along the way, and we think we know things one way and it turns out we don't. So Alison Armstrong, who's been a great proponent of relationships and has studied men a lot, says women are mistaken in thinking that men are just like them, only they're behaving badly. Well, she says, no, 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 no. Men are very different from that. And as I've got involved in reading her information about what she's learned about men and what men tell her, I'm going, oh boy, I was mistaken in some of my perspectives on men, and I need to do a better job of that. So part of the role of being in partnership is to learn more about your partner, to learn how they think, and to understand that how they think could be very different from you. It doesn't make it wrong necessarily, but somehow there's a coming together of, oh, sometimes you're going to agree to disagree because you're over here and they're over there and you're never going to get to here. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes the way someone else was brought up is so vastly different that it's harder to communicate because your styles are vastly different. So I can think of a couple that I know where the one partner grew up where if there was a problem, then there was lots of arguing and shouting going on. And their partner had the opposite experience, that when there was something wrong, there was total silence in the house. Well, how do you reconcile that when you're trying to communicate with one another? Well, you first have to be aware, oh, this is what's going on. That's the way they handle things. And it's not against me. They're not necessarily um, beating up on me in that way because they're shouting at me, but that's the way they learn to deal with whatever was going on. And oh, this person isn't giving me the silent treatment because they hate me or I've necessarily done something wrong, but that's the way they learn to deal with stuff. So somehow we got to figure this out and then come to a better a better peace of mind and a resolution of whatever's happening. See what I mean? Relationships are tricky. so, so, so my magnificent friends, I know that you can have the kind of relationships that you most desire because you're that magnificent. You have that capability right inside you, and you probably have a desire. I mean, who wants terrible relationships? They suck. They're but sometimes we need some terrible relationships just to point out life could be a lot better if we move this way rather than this way. So this week, have a think about relationships and see where you're at in terms of that. I may do one more of these as I think about how we go. As I said last week, when I started talking about relationships, the most important relationship is the one you have with you, the one that's inside you, because that will color all your relationships with anyone else. So, because you're always with you and who you are and what you believe you deserve and how you are tells a big part of the story. So, maybe you've discovered in relationship with other people that you're not right with yourself yet. So, maybe there's some self work required. Now, so that's it for this week. I've pre-recorded this session and it'll be posted at our usual time on Friday because I'm camping with my granddaughters and we're going to see. I'll be surrounded by lots of relatives and shirt tail relatives and it'll be a fun time. So I wanted to get this off to you while I'm having my fun and learning to be in relationship with my granddaughters even more and more as they grow. So in the meantime, have a glorious week and enjoy every minute of every day that you can. If you feel that you would like to explore anything about relationships more personally with me one-on-one, then I invite you to download my app, The Magnificence Mentor. I'll put it in the little description section below. You can go to my website, www.yourmagnificencementor.com, download my app, and when you go to the Tea with Sue videos category, click on the latest Tea with Sue video, and there's an action button in there that will say, what does it say? It says book your no charge 30-minute Tea with Sue. It'll take you to my calendar, pick a date and time, and we'll either chat by phone or do a Zoom call. I'm happy to explore anything that you would like to chat about a little bit further. In the meantime, please like and subscribe to my channel and have yourself a magnificent time because you are magnificent. See you next week.